Is the woo world calling your name, but you are just too shy to reveal your inner spiritual self? Well, finding your tribe can be a bit daunting when you're not quite sure where to look. But when you open yourself up to this magical way of living, you will be surprised who steps into the light. Just like my friend and fellow spiritual self-starter, Erica Kelly. We've known each other for nearly 20 years, have been neighbors, friends, colleagues in TV, but it wasn't until about 2 or 3 years ago that we actually realized we had a bigger calling in common, living a more authentic and spiritual life. And today, Erica and I are talking all about it, from our mutual gateway practice, Reiki, to manifesting motherhood, raising conscious kids, and of course, crystals. She's the owner of Lilac Road Crystals, a Reiki Master, Akashic Record Reader, and one of the best intuitives I know. And I am so excited to share our conversation with you. So without further ado, let's get into it. Hi, Erica. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. I am really excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to chat with you in this capacity because it's so different than how we used to know each other. And I have my seltzer in my wine glass. So I'm like ready to party. Let's do this.
That's awesome. Like we used to do in our 20s. I mean,
Yeah.
We've known each other for such a long time, but it's been just recent, really, that we realized that we kind of both were drawn and we are into the space. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I saw you post like some tarot cards or something on Instagram. I was like, wait a minute. Do I have a friend that's also into this space? Because it is really, really hard to find people, especially sometimes open yourself up to people and say like, I'm into this woo-woo stuff. I'm into spiritual stuff. I believe there's something more. It's kind of, I think it's more popular now. People talk about it more now, but it's hard sometimes to like step into it and own that. So yeah. I think when I saw you do that, it was really exciting. And, you know, I reached out to you about it. It's like, wait, are you into this? And,
I know. And it's funny because like, I still haven't, I don't know if I've like, still don't feel like I've fully like come out about my spiritual life. Like, cause I have my crystal shop, IG, like Instagram, separate from like my personal. And like, I don't post, I'll do all of my like tarot card or like intuition tests and all that stuff on my crystal page. And I don't really do it on my personal. And like, I feel like that's going to be my next step and my next growth is like really like putting myself out there.
Well, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think you don't really put it out there in your public world? I know even with intentional living, I started, kind of, I've been in and out of the space for a long time. I feel like kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And then even stepping in fully, I was kind of like, oh, we're going to start with the home and just kind of tiptoe in. And now I'm just full fledged. Like, here I am. I'm talking about it. Like,
and it's like,
why do you think
once you do it, it's so much easier, right? And I think it's that first ripping off the Band-Aid that's the hardest. And then once you do it, it's like, okay, this is just what it is now. And I think for me, it's almost like, am I ready? Am I ready? Am I ready? And like, I am ready. It's just time to do it, right? So I think it's just making that step and just doing it. So
like, what do you think holds you back? Is it, I think it's really important for me to find like-minded people, to find your tribe, to find those people that can really support you in your journey. Is that what you're searching for? Or like, what is it that's holding you back, do you think?
I guess like it's always that thing like, oh, what are people going to think? People that have known me. Because we both come from the TV world, right? There's I wouldn't say that television is necessarily the most spiritual business, right? Like there's a lot of intense personalities in television. And I think that it's just such a far change from that I feel like a lot of people that I know from there are going to be like, whoa, what is this? It's like such a divergence, right?
Well, that's all kind of about stepping into who you are, like on an authentic level, like owning that authentic version of you. I think we all put up these facades and these, what we have always been or whatever role we've played, whatever it is, we've kind of put that outward, and it's hard to just kind of break that down and step into yourself. TV itself is just so was very not authentic, I will say, inauthentic. It's very,
right. And that's
there's a lot of fakeness.
That's why I even got into all this stuff, because I was working on a show that was like, it's like crying every day. It was like so stressful, and it was like you're manipulating these people's lives, and I just didn't feel good about myself. And I'm like, there's more to life than this. I had this moment where I'm like, there is more to life than this. Like, and I've always had this knowing that I am the most fulfilled when I'm helping other people. I just never knew what it looked like. Like, to me, I was like, oh, if I want to help people, I have to like volunteer all the time. And then I never was like, how am I going to make a living volunteering? So I didn't really know what it looked like. And then it was during the pandemic that I was like, oh, I know I'm supposed to be helping people. And then I just got this, like, I don't even remember what it was. Like, I got this pull to get certified in Reiki. And then like that was like a domino effect. And it just set off this whole string of events that like led me to where I am now. So yeah, I think it's a lot of things is like in life is like following that gut and that instinct, and those areas of your life where you feel pulled to things, just like stop pushing it down and like really explore that, because it's there for a reason.
Well, so, I mean, essentially you're talking about your intuition. Your intuition was telling you to do this. It was leading you in this way. So it led you into Reiki, which led into what, I mean, I kind of fell into it the same way. Well, I was always interested in, I think, the psychic world. And I kept coming across people like the psychic twins on a show I worked on, or things like that. And I was always fascinated. And I'd be like, I think, for my 25th birthday, I saved up money so that I can have a reading by them specifically. And, it was really hard to get in, all these things. And, one thing after the other, I'd keep getting into it. And I know with me, it's like I had my breakup with someone when I really finally like stepped into it. Yeah. And we had lived together, and I was like, I'm going to sage my house. I think my mom told me, you should sage your house or something, like in passing, not really knowing what that was, which led into finding a home healer, which led into me learning Reiki, and then breath work, and then into all these things. It's like the gateway drug, Reiki, I feel like is.
Like snowballs, right? Yeah, that was like, and I was even trying to think like, because this was the same way. Like, I was always into mediumship. I always loved tarot cards. Never in a million years did I think that I could be the person giving the reading, right? Like, I was like, that's not me. And then, have you ever heard of family constellation therapy?
No.
Okay, so it's this really amazing thing where like you have a group of people, and one person is like the sitter, the client who's getting the reading, right? And they have an issue with their family member or family members, or they need to heal ancestral stuff. And so everyone else in the group gets assigned a family member. Okay. And so I got assigned this guy's father. Like, so I was playing the part of his father. And so like during the session, like you have conversations with these people. It's like healing and like helps like with closure. But then there's also channeling involved. And like, so I get assigned this man's father, and almost immediately it's like a light switch like flipped, and I got like overtaken by like emotion and like all of this. Like, I started like bawling, and I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from, and like I just started spouting out all this information to this man about his father that he never met before. And I have no idea where it's coming from. And then afterwards, like the lady was like, yeah, you were just channeling this man's father. It was the trippiest thing and I have ever experienced. And that was my first inclination, like, oh, wow, I never realized that like I even had this ability. And then that kind of led like to the Reiki, and then that led to mediumship, then more crystals. It's like,
it's ongoing.
Yeah, it's just like going and going and going. So
channeling to me is so fascinating. I know I channel when I write. I don't necessarily channel like speaking like that, but when I write, I just like, I could write in someone else's voice, whatever it is, like it just comes through me. I know things that I don't necessarily need to like have any reason to know. It's pretty cool. So channeling is really, really cool. It's always been something I've been into. But then even you're really skilled, because I know with your mediumship and your intuition and your readings, I mean, even in my life, my husband happens to be was a believer in something more, but and was always growing up, even as a kid, very into like mindset and manifestation and vision boards and things like that, but like more from the science side of it, not really in this intuitive side, like knowing. He didn't like discard it, but didn't really like totally fully believe in it. And I know when you were going through your mediumship course, that's when we kind of were starting to talk about this stuff. I was like, well, try on my husband, because it's always nice. And I think for anyone listening, is if you are interested in this space, when you do find someone like-minded, when you can find your tribe, to be able to have these open dialogues and conversations, because it takes so much support, I think, to like, am I doing this right? Is this okay? And, it was great to have our connection for it, because then we could be a sounding board for one another. And I could be like, here, try, practice on me. And it's a safe space, which I think is really necessary when it comes to this kind of work.
Yeah.
Is to find your people, your tribe, your safe space in whatever form that comes in.
Yeah. Because also it's like, sometimes, a lot of times in this work too, like weird stuff happens, and you want, like, my husband, love him to death. Like, he's very grounded. He doesn't really buy into anything. And he's like the sweetest man. I'll like do an Akashic Records reading or a mediumship reading. I'll go out there and I'm like, oh my God, the craziest thing happened. And he's like, great. But like, it's not the same as like if I could call you up or like another person that does it, to like really get into it and like be like, wow, that's like, that happened to me too. And then you can trade stories. And it also just helps your development too. Because like you might get intuition hits in one way, and that, it's just fun to share. And it really helps you feel like you're not insane, because some of the stuff that happens can really make you feel like you're making it up, or like you're going crazy. And
if you can find your safe space and your like someone that you could bounce off of, I know for me, and I know we're very similar in that, it's like we want some sort of proof that what we're doing is real, or like what we're hearing is right. You want some sort of that confirmation. And when you're going out and you're working with other people in this space that are clients or people that you don't know, you're not necessarily going to get that back. And I think that was the huge thing with when you were doing the mediumship practice with Matt and I. He unfortunately had lost one of his best friends, and there was nothing you've never met this person. There was nothing you could have known about this person. I didn't give you any information, and the reading came back so good. I mean, it was he was crying. I had chills. Like, it was so spot on. It was so good that it instantly made him like, okay, I'm a full-on buying-in believer, which is wonderful for me because I have that support at home.
Yeah.
But, I think it is important to find your tribe and to find those people, even if they're not like a friend, even if it's like an online community. I know my mentor has her Good Vibe Tribe. Sonia has her Good Vibe Tribe, which is great. You belong to a couple groups, online groups that are really supportive and that you practice with. I personally think you're done practicing. You need to just go full in.
I know, right? It's like, it's like the ripping off the Band-Aid thing. So I know, and I appreciate your support so much, because it really does help. It really does, like, everybody needs that support. And especially like, just like it comes down to values too, and like having those spiritual beliefs. Like, it's nice to just know that you have an aligned value system with someone.
And if you don't have it at home, like, like you said, your husband is super grounded. That's really good, probably for you, because you are so connected. I always tell you how talented you are, especially in the space of readings. And I want to hear more about this. You're really into the Akashic Records now. And I don't know much about that. You did an Akashic reading for me, but how did you get into that? So it's kind of been the snowball effect, right? Yeah. And that is one of the things that you've gravitated towards.
Yeah, it was somebody recommended a Akashic reader to me. And so I got that done, and it was so mind-blowing and accurate. And I was like, what is this? Like, I didn't really know what to expect, because it's different than a psychic reading or a tarot reading, because the Akashic records are basically, everyone has a record. Everything has a record. Like, your house has an Akashic record. Your pets have an Akashic record. Your job, like it's like a composite of every thought, action, event, soul that has ever existed. And it's just exists in a higher dimension. So you just got to raise your consciousness to connect to it. And it really is great for helping you to connect to your soul's purpose. And it can help identify any like blocks that you might need to heal, but then really helps you to see things from the perspective of love and the perspective of what would your higher self do in this instance, and what is the highest outcome for this situation. And it's almost like a coaching session. Because when you do a session, and it's, even since I've read your records, I have sensed like it's already evolved for me. And like, so when I do a session, it's basically like a therapy session between you, me, and your guides. And like, you're telling me your problems, and the guides are asking me questions to ask you, and vice versa. And like, there's all this information that comes out through this conversation that helps lead you to heal things from the past, and then help you see, here's what the best situation is for you. And the guides in the Akasha, they're aware of free will, so they're never going to say like, this is what you need to do, but they're like, help guide you, like, here's maybe some next steps that will help you get to your highest potential. So yeah, it's really fascinating. And you can use it for, if you're writing a book and you want to channel information through them as you write a book. There's so many ways you can use it. It's just really fascinating. And also, like, it's not really psychic. It's not going to give you like, here's what's going to happen in a month. It's going to give you guidance of, here's some next steps that are going to help you get to your highest potential.
Okay.
So, yeah, it like really respects your free will.
Well, I think that is where this whole space, the whole spiritual world, gets a little bit of a bad rap, is that psychic thing, this prediction, or what it's kind of like this whole, is that real? I don't know. I think it's just the way it's been portrayed, and especially like, coming from TV, the way we've portrayed this kind of thing, it's kind of like some parlor trick. But when you really tap in, and when you can really take it to that higher level, and if someone does explore the idea of Akashic Records, or even Reiki or healings, and the things that come through, they resonate. Like when you feel it, it's like it really hits you hard. So I think it's really cool. I mean, that is exactly what you're here to do, is to help people on that.
Yeah.
And you're doing it in other ways as well. I mean, even with like your crystal business.
Yeah. I mean, so I ended up getting the crystal. So I took Reiki, and then I was like, really got into, I was always kind of into crystals like 10 years ago, but like not like, I'd use it to like manifest love or like money or something, but I wasn't like, I didn't have like a crazy collection or anything. Once I got into Reiki, then I got obsessed with all their healing properties, and then I wanted to like collect as many as I could. And then it got to a point where I was buying so many, I was like, I'm just going to open my own shop at this point. And so I did. And so now my shop's like a year old, and one thing I never expected from having this shop was how many customers I've heard from that have written me after, that have said like how that crystal, like buying, like it's literally like a shiny rock, but like it's so, they have meaning to people. And like so many people have reached out to tell me like how much it meant to them and how thankful they are. And like, it's been really healing for me to see how I'm helping people find these crystals that are going to help them in some way. So was like kind of an unexpected benefit from it. So it's been really nice.
So which way, like if someone wanted to step into this space and is like kind of new to it, like where do you think is the best place to start?
I would think first, like meditation is like the first. And you would think they'd probably be already meditating if they're interested in going. And
well, I'm really bad at meditating, so no.
And when you say like in this space, you mean just like going down the spiritual path? Yeah. I think it's like follow where your heart is pulling you. And I think like that's where your intuition is going to come into play. Like, are you really into crystals, or do you feel like you're meant to be a healer? Some people just know that they're meant to be a healer. And I think Reiki is a great, like you were saying, it's like a great gateway drug, because that Reiki opens up so much for people, not only healing capabilities, but then it's so good to open up your intuition. And how did you get into it? Like, what was your path?
Like I said, I think I've always been drawn to this idea of psychic, but I'm such a control freak that I've always like wanted to know how things are going to end. I've talked about this before. Like, I will read the last page of a book first, because I just like, and I don't know if it's a protection mechanism or what, but it's like this, like I need to know, and it's a control thing. It's obviously couched in fear. So it's kind of like, I would think of my life almost like that book. I want to know how it's going to end. I want to know these things that I want in life are going to happen. But now that I'm in this space and learned so much over so many years about it, I've realized, you have to let that girl go. You can't really know. There's no way of knowing. And I think that's the whole psychic thing. I was looking towards that for whatever issues I was having in my life or whatever outcomes I wanted. And, things happen in God's timing, and you cannot control those outcomes. But, as a control freak, as a producer, like you and I both are, it's kind of like you want to produce your life to be a certain way, and I couldn't. So letting go has been a huge thing for me. But once I've, took Reiki, looking at little ways to heal my life is how I got into it, and being upset and trying to clear, like feeling this need to clear an energy. It's following your intuition. But that is what I've really learned is like, I have a psychic on speed dial. I always joke around. I have a psychic on speed dial. My mentor is one of the most famous psychics there is. But you can't just call and be like, what's going to happen? You have to lean into it and know that everything is going to be okay.
Because then if you know what's going to happen, you're not going to learn the lesson you're supposed to learn from it, right? Like everything is happening because you're supposed to learn. And that's why a lot of soul contracts start repeating, because maybe in the last life you didn't learn what you were supposed to. So hopefully this one you do, and then you can clear that. And
so when it comes to like the Akashic Records, you're not really doing future predictions.
No.
You're mainly talking about really helping you along your path. You're tapping into the higher self and the higher realms to guide you and give you support in what you're doing or where you're going.
Yeah, it's really to like help your soul's growth and like and tap into your highest true self and potential and what you're capable of if you didn't have all of these limiting beliefs holding you back. So, and you can go back and into your life or even to past lives to figure out, where is this limiting belief coming from? What is the root cause of that? And then you can take a look at it from a different perspective and heal that. And then that way you can move forward in this life with a more open heart and a clearer purpose. So,
do you think that would go hand in hand with subconscious reprogramming?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I'm taking a Akasha course with a lovely soul. Her name is Amber. She's the Malibu medium. She's so talented. And I was actually talking to her last week about how I did a session for somebody, and it was like trudging through mud. Like she was really, really down about a romantic relationship. And I was like, so I was talking to Amber and I'm like, I really feel like it was almost like I was in therapy. And she was like, that's kind of what it is, doing an Akashic reading. Like you're talking things through with people, and like, how do they feel about things? And like, what is the root cause of it? And healing that so you can move forward. So it is, and it's very similar to like a neurolinguistics programming session, which you do a lot of the same stuff. You like look at the root cause and clear that. So it's so funny. And even Reiki does that too, where you go back and you can clear old energy. And it's so funny how all these different modalities really seamlessly fit together. It's kind of fascinating.
Well, I think that also goes hand in hand with kind of the messages we get from this world. Everyone is pretty much saying the same thing. It always comes back to the same thing. It's all rooted in the same thing. It's just who's your messenger and how are you getting it from. But what you said, I thought also was really interesting. It seems like a lot of us and a lot of people fall into this space when they're in distress or something happens. It's like you almost have to hit this, like, I don't think you have to hit rock bottom, but you have to have this moment of like, why there has to be a better reason for it that seems to open it up. I rarely hear stories from people that are saying like, I just knew I was going to do this and I'm born into it. You know, usually there's a struggle involved that opens the door to the spiritual world.
I agree. Because it's a lot of times where it's like when you heal yourself, that helps you heal other people. And the more you heal yourself, the more you can heal others. And I also think the more you heal yourself, it allows you more perspective when you're helping others as well. Because if, you know, your whole life was perfect, it's going to be really hard to coach someone whose life has been like a shit show and they need help getting out of it when like your whole life has always been like all sparkles. Like if you haven't been through stuff, it's hard to relate to that. So I think the struggles come in handy because that's where you learn your lessons. I've always said, like, whenever I get the Tower card in tarot, which like some people are like terrified to
Deathly
get,
afraid
or
of.
like the Death card, I'm always like, yes,
Yeah.
because like that always means like, yes, okay, something shitty might happen or like heartbreaking, but that usually, like, if you look back on your life when something crappy has happened, or like you broke up with someone, or a job ended, or like you just had a total meltdown, most of the time, in my experience, all of the time, like things have turned around and like something great came into your life afterwards. So it's like a lot of times like having those breakdowns is like a breakthrough, right?
It's the best thing that usually happens to you. It's always hard in the moment, but when you can gain a little clarity, gain a little hindsight, I mean, it is always the best thing. I mean, you and I have even talked about that. It's just, when is that your experience? It's really, that's what qualifies you to step into any space, whether you're teaching or coaching or anything in this realm, in this space, is anyone can do it, because if you have any sort of life experience, you can help others through their life experiences. You will be connected to people. You will find your tribe of people that your message resonates with, that you can connect with. I mean, I think that's really the goal of what I think we wanted to talk about today, is like finding your tribe, finding your support system, because that is so key to going through this walk, to really stepping into your intuition and your spiritual self.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm like actively trying to manifest for myself in my real life. Like I have an amazing network of people, like either through the Reiki courses I've taken, like I belong to a Discord of all crystal shop owners, which is like insanely supportive. And I belong to this Third Eye Library, which is like a great suppository of everything woo you could think of. And there's amazing women in that. And so I know all these spiritual women all over the country, but I don't have a lot of spiritual women or men in my real life. Like I'm in Brooklyn, New York. If anyone listening is in Brooklyn, let me know. Call me up, hit my DMs, because I would love to connect with you. So yeah, and it's hard when you have 2 kids, you have a full-time job, you have a business on the side. When do you have time as an adult to make new friends? It's hard.
Well, and then you want to tiptoe around it, because I know, I just moved to Tennessee a little over a year ago. It's not really woo here either. It's very spiritual, but more in the sense of let's go to church and celebrate God, which I believe in, but that's not this space as much. And, you want to tiptoe around because people like think you're crazy.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the wacky mom on the playground. You want your friends to have decent, good friends. But you also, I know for me, and you're a mom of young kids, and our kids are similar in ages, you want to raise them with this consciousness, I think. I mean, at least for me, I am really trying hard to raise them to respect their dreams or their imagination or their friends, because that opens up the creativity, your imagination. That is the language of your intuition and your spiritual self. So I talk about this a lot, that as parents, we tend to shut that off of our kids, do this, do that. We tell them what to do. And I'm really trying to step into like, no, let our kids, they are so hardwired to be intuitive from birth. And we're the ones that shut them off. I mean, even today, Harper, I picked her up from camp And her teachers pulled me aside and said, is she afraid of older people? And I'm like, no, not really. And they're like, well, there was a guest today, like a scientist guy that came to do a show, and I guess she was just deathly afraid. She started crying. She didn't want to go near him or anything. So they ended up taking her back to a classroom and letting her play while he did his whole thing. And I just told them, I was like, I really honor her feelings. She's a really great read of energy and people, and you cannot force this girl to do anything that she doesn't want to do or be in a situation where she doesn't feel is right for her. So it's not that she doesn't like old people.
Great
there was
quality.
Something about it that wasn't for her, and I don't force it. It's not common, I think, for parents. Like, we're like, no, be nice, go see the scientist, man. And I'm happy her school didn't force it. But I mean, do you have, like, with your kids, I imagine you go through stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's just really trying to be more mindful, right? The way that you talk to them, the way that you nurture them. I definitely my daughter, Sophie, is so creative. And I think one thing I want to really instill in them that I wish my parents had is that it's okay to be weird. Like, it's okay if you're the weird one. Honestly, I want to hang out with the weird people. Like, those are the people that are interesting and fun. And like, it's like, don't be afraid to be the weird one. Don't be afraid. Don't feel like you have to fit in.
The fit in, that's key.
Yeah. So like, really, I want to drive home, like, be your own person and don't worry about pleasing groups or fitting into certain groups. Like, you'll find your people, and just, just really own how you are. And that's like, I think one of my biggest things I want to instill in them.
Well, I mean, even you just saying that, I feel like you're giving yourself a talk, like how we started this. You want to find your people. You want to not care what other people think about you. And I've definitely experienced that too. It's really just stepping into, like, who you are on an authentic level, who you are inside. And I think it's really scary. I think it's really scary for at least us, and probably a lot of people and their adults, because we haven't been shown that way. That just hasn't been the way of life, to just be you. I think it's a lot more common now. I think parents are a lot more conscious and aware now, but it doesn't mean it stops it from the kids' perspective. So if we can help our children do that, it's huge.
Yeah, I know. I remember I was like at drop off one time, and like, Sophie is obsessed with the crystals too, which I love. Like, I love being able to share that.
So is Crystal. She loves Crystal. So is Harper.
I was like, wait, Harper, you have a kid named Crystal?
I don't have a kid named Crystal. I have a friend named Crystal and a sister-in-law named Crystal. I don't have a child named Crystal. Harper is too. She is obsessed with the crystals.
Yeah. And like, so Sophie was talking, and I love that. I love to be able to share that with her. And like, she was talking about it at drop off one day, and one of the other moms was like, it came out that a crystal business, and you could tell she was just like, did not know what to think about it. And you would think, like, living in Brooklyn, Brooklyn, it's a little hip, like, there's stuff going on, but like, I have not found, if there's a crystal community in Brooklyn, I have not found it, or like a really strong, even like, I was trying to find a Reiki share in Brooklyn and can't find one. So
the other day I went by the store, and the marquee or the store sign says Soul Society. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to go check it out. Like, see what they have in there. I pull up and it's like a hairdresser. Just like, wait a minute. This doesn't, I don't know where you got this name, but it's like, definitely looks like it should be a spiritual shop. Right. And it's not, I haven't found much of that. There might be a little bit more in Nashville, but not so much in the suburbs of Nashville and Franklin. So
I know, maybe I want to like manifest like $1 million, and then I'll just open my own crystal shop in my neighborhood. That'll be like,
well, you are like a master manifester. I mean, you manifested your husband, you manifested your move to LA, you manifested your work in television. I mean, how did you do all that?
I manifested 2 healthy pregnancies at the age of 40. That to me is like, a lot of my family, I feel like, never thought I was going to have kids. But deep down, I always knew. And I mean, I didn't know if I wanted kids until I was like 35. But then once I knew I wanted kids, and I was like, okay, I can make this happen. And I think part of it is just like really trusting and knowing. It's like, I've heard some people explain it like, when you order something on Amazon, you could like click that order now button, and you just know it's going to show up. Like, you don't question it. You're not like checking like the tracking, like you have a knowing like that is going to arrive. And I think with manifesting, a lot of it is that, and like taking your hands off the wheel, trying not to control, which is hard for us that love to control things. And just, I mean, I feel like there's so many cliches, like, I mean, it's been talked about so much now. It's like, oh, you got to really feel it. I know when I was trying to manifest my pregnancies, I literally got a onesie and I put baby powder on it. And I put on like a nursery rhyme, and I would meditate with this onesie on my shoulder. And because a lot of the keys with manifesting is like making it like a whole sensory experience. You want to hear, feel, smell, everything, use all your senses to really bypass your conscious brain and get into your subconscious, because your subconscious does not know what you're seeing with your third eye or your inner eye or with your real eyes. So if you can make it sensory, you're tricking your brain into feeling like it's real, right? So like I had this onesie on my shoulder. I smelled like baby powder. I'd imagine like what the weight of the baby would feel on my shoulder, the warmth of it, like the sounds the baby would make. And I listened to the nursery rhymes. And I mean, I'm sure part of it's genetics, but I got pregnant pretty easily. And I think I just really like settled into that knowing that the baby was already here. And really like that visualization really helped me too. Now I just need to figure that out with money. And I'll be golden. I'm still figuring that one out, but I'm getting there. So.
Wow. No, I mean, I've heard and I practice the feeling and just kind of taking yourself to the place where you're already there. I know Matt and I will walk the neighborhoods that we want to live in, just like we're being a part of it, putting yourself in the scenarios and situations you want to already be in. But wow, I've never like that actual physical acting. I mean, something like that is so how would you do that with money? I actually saw someone do this where they would write themselves a check every day and what they would spend it on. And like they would cash the check, like fake cash a check. So it was this whole act of doing it. It's very similar to what you were talking about. I mean,
yeah, I think that's a Abraham Hicks.
It is. That's right.
It's like the money game, which I've tried in the past, but I always would do well for like a week and then I would forget about it.
I think Ed Milet was talking about it, like you want a car, you want a Ferrari, like that's your dream, that's what you want to manifest. Then go out and even if you can't afford it, go rent it for the day. Like you can rent a Ferrari and drive it for the day. Put yourself in the driver's seat essentially so that you can feel it, because how do you feel something that you haven't actually experienced? Maybe that's the missing piece that a lot of people have with manifestation. When you make the vision boards and you're like, but I'm feeling it and I'm doing all my affirmations and I'm talking to myself and I'm only putting those thoughts out there. If you're not truly feeling it, how do you feel it if you actually don't feel it?
Yeah, you have to really believe it, right? And I think a lot of times people get caught up with manifesting money because it's like, oh, you got to get into like the feeling of abundance. And a lot of people get hung up on like, okay, what does abundance feel like? And then it's like, okay, maybe change the word abundance to like love. Like when you feel abundant, like how are you feeling in that moment? Are you feeling like free? Are you feeling, at peace? Are you feeling love? So,
I mean, grateful. I think feeling grateful when you have something that you really have always wanted. I would always say like, I'm really grateful. I know just recently when I walked back into my home from being somewhere, it's like, I looked at Matt, I looked at my husband, and I go, I am so grateful for our home.
Yeah.
I just feel so grateful for this life we are building.
Yeah.
That right there puts you in that spirit of abundance and gratefulness, I think.
Gratitude.
It's really easy to lose it, though.
Yeah. I think having a gratitude practice every day is great too. Like that gratitude is one of the easiest ways to raise your vibration, right? And call in more. Because if you're not happy with what you have, you're not going to get more of what you want.
So how do you say, or how would you stay grateful in the face of, I mean, just like you and I, we're both raising young kids, we're both moms, we're both building businesses. You're also working full time on top of that. As women, we're required, we're playing the role of taking care of the husbands, the kids, the houses, all these things. No matter how helpful your husband is, it's still kind of like your role. how do you not let the weight of all that come in so that you can continue to feel grateful on a daily basis? Because I'm very guilty of the fact of just like letting, one tantrum too many just throw me off the rails.
Well, I think it's important is to like own those feelings too. Like if you have a moment and your kid is not listening or not going to bed and you're like frustrated, it's like acknowledge that. Like I am frustrated right now, and not trying to push it down, and like sit in it and like be like, okay, I am frustrated. And then, I like to do tapping to like just work through stuff and like just move. Sometimes like even just saying I'm frustrated, acknowledging it, like kind of takes the air out of it. And then like you kind of feel a little bit of peace after that. And I think that is, not shying away from feeling your feelings and not feeling guilty for feeling those feelings. I think that like there's nothing like guilt to really tank your vibration, right? So giving yourself grace is huge in those moments. And then, always trying to like look at things like the littlest things, like, oh, we have food in the fridge, or like water, or like breathing air. Like I am like so obsessed with that sub that's like lost.
I know.
Right now, and all I can think of is like, I am so grateful that I have air to breathe, So
I know.
It's like the littlest things. Like my husband made me dinner tonight. The laundry's done. And then just kind of like climbing your way up that ladder until like you kind of reset yourself. And
so what does your gratitude practice look like?
I guess like every night when I go to bed, like I always like I'll do self Reiki on myself, and I'll always say a little prayer like what I'm grateful for, and then I do like Reiki practice, like the sayings in the morning, the just for today, release all worries, and I'll have gratitude and that little prayer. But I guess when I get really busy, it's hard. You let it go a little bit, and that's something I need to be better about, being consistent. I'm not consistent. And that's huge.
I was going to say, you sound a lot more disciplined than me, because I'll find myself forgetting it. But, today I went on a walk and I just sat there and just it's hot out, but letting that air hit me, and then I breathe in and go like, wow, this is beautiful. Just taking a little moment in your day. It doesn't have to be all day. I don't think I can feel grateful all day, every day. I just don't think that's realistic.
That's not a human, you wouldn't be a human being. You'd be lying to yourself if you're grateful all day, every day. But it's like the crappy stuff that happens that helps you be more grateful for the good stuff. Like you have a crappy day at work, and then you come home and your husband like helped give the kids a bath. Like that makes you grateful, right?
But these are like real life spiritual practices. I think people think when you are stepping into this world, and a little bit of our conversation has been focused on that, like the intro into this world or owning this world is, I think people think you have to be like all in. You have to be some hippy dippy woo woo crazy person to be spiritual, and that's not the case.
Or not.
It's like anything.
Like not get angry ever. Yeah.
Always be positive. Everything is wonderful, and it's not this I don't need anything thing. I mean, you were talking about Amazon. You just know it's going to be there. Like I went to this lecture years ago, and they were talking about how one of the girls there, she was talking about how she can manifest things on a dime, and they called it Manifest Prime. And I thought that was hilarious. It's like Amazon Prime, Manifest Prime. But that's not to say that, you're living always in this state of constant gratitude. It's just everything is wonderful. You do have to have those ups and downs every day. It's just, how do you bring yourself out of them?
Well, I think that's important. It's like, it really goes back to like how fast you bring yourself out of it, right? Like you're going to have shitty things happen to you throughout the day, but are you going to let yourself sit in that all day long and let it like then snowball and make the rest of your day bad? Or you're going to turn it around? I think that's really where the spirituality comes into play, where you're like, I'm not going to let this one thing tank my entire day. I'm going to, there's this one technique that's really great where, like, say you get cut off and you get like pissed off at the other driver. Like, it's really like acknowledging that you're mad, and then thinking about like, what stories are you telling yourself in this moment? What thoughts are you having, that are causing you to feel angry? And then ask yourself, is that what your higher self would believe about this situation? And usually, I mean, the answer is going to be no. So that means like what you're thinking at that moment is false. Like that's not your truth. So what is your truth? And then you start telling yourself all like the positive things about it. Like, maybe that person is having a bad day too. Maybe they need to get somewhere. You are safe. Like you didn't get in a car accident and you're able to get to work on time and everything will be fine. And it's just like talking your way out of it and looking at it from a different perspective, from a higher perspective. And I think that's where spirituality can really help. And then like you don't get to work all pissed off and then like your meeting goes crappy, you know, and it just like it ends there. You don't carry it with you. And I think that's where, just that recovery time is what.
Well, I think if we actually can look at it too, is like when you carry that energy, that whether it's a negative or the anger, those downer energies with you, it takes so much more effort to stay in that zone.
Right.
It's so much easier to just let things go. But I know sometimes we want to ruminate in it. We want to go there. For some reason, I don't know why as humans, sometimes we're just like, no, I just really feel like being pissed off today.
Yeah.
And we
fine.
go there.
If you want to have a day like that, go for it. Sometimes you just beat it. Then you go home, punch a pillow, like put on some music and like shake it out, But
it takes so much more energy to stay in that zone than to go into that happy zone.
You'll probably be exhausted
or into that peaceful zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the key, is really to learn what works for you on a daily basis. That it's not like just being spiritual. It's not like you're walking around doing Reiki on yourself all day.
So what I now have been doing, like if I get pissed off about something, like I don't want to say I enjoy doing this, but like it's interesting where I'll be like, why is this triggering me? What is it about this situation that is making me angry? Because a lot of times it goes back to your childhood, something that happened in your childhood.
It always goes back.
And it's like, then you can really look at it from that lens and you see that you're just like making up a story, right? And that like, okay, yeah, you got upset, but it's just because of something that you're telling yourself, that you've been telling yourself since you were 7 years old.
Well, that's hard as a mom and as a parent, because it's just kind of like, anytime I do that for myself, then I equate it to like, oh my goodness, what am I doing to my kids? Because no matter what you do, they are going to grow up and they're going to have things from their childhood that probably aren't treating them in a positive way as they're adults. We can only do our best, but then it's just like, I feel like sometimes I'm walking on pins and needles, like, God, I don't want to like influence them in this way or make them think this when they get older. I just wanted them to just be able to be happy, So it's hard. I mean, when you actually like put yourself in their scenarios too.
Right. I am always thinking about that. Like, especially like around like a money mindset too.
Oh yes.
And like I'll try catching myself. Like I don't ever want to say something in front of her like, oh, that's too expensive. Like I'll like literally stop myself mid-sentence. Like I don't want to program that into her brain because up until the age of 7, this is when like they're like little computers when we're just they're like absorbing all of these words and programs from us. And so but then if I do slip a couple times, it's like I try not to like get too down on myself about it. But it is something I'm trying to be conscious about, and like the words you use with them are so important.
Well, money is huge. The money mindset thing is massive. But also, I have a lot of self-image issues because of that. And so I find that even with like Harper, when I'm getting dressed in the morning, she's like, she's really into makeup and nails, and she wants to do her nails and her makeup, and so I let her play with it on occasion if we're not going anywhere, and she'll put her lips on, as she says, and Mommy, I need my lips or my eyelashes or whatever. And she puts it on. And the minute she puts it on, she goes, I'm so beautiful. Look how beautiful I am. I'm like, honey, you're pretty no matter, but then I always try and validate any of her looks with something else too, because, I grew up performing. I grew up doing beauty pageants. I grew up doing all these things that were very looks based. I wanted to do it. That's okay. But then it's also given me quite a bit of an issue as you get older. So it's really like a fine line. You want to like lift them up, but at the same time, like you have to be very careful on what you say and how you say it, because I don't want her to think I need makeup to be pretty.
Right. Yeah. My daughter was the same way with the necklace. Like she really was like, she wanted to wear this necklace one time and she's like, oh, if I don't wear it, I won't be pretty. And I was like, whoa, stop
Yeah.
right there. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, you can use that to express yourself, but that does not mean that you're not pretty. And
No.
yeah, it like breaks your heart a little bit. And it's a lot of it too is like letting go of the control and knowing that they're going to have to go through these things, and
True.
trust, and like just trusting that you know, instill enough confidence in them that they'll be able to deal with it, or they'll be able to make the right decision. I think that's going to be the hardest part about parenting, especially when our kids are still the age where we can still have a little bit of control over them. But then once they get older and they can start making their own decisions, that to me is terrifying. That's going to be such a test.
Yeah, I mean, I tried my best now, even today with Hayden. He just turned 2 over the weekend, and we're on a walk, and he's like, he wants to be in the wagon, out of the wagon, in the wagon, out of the wagon, wants to walk. I'm trying to allow him, like, where he can make decisions to make those decisions, which very limited when it comes to a 2-year-old, obviously. But yeah, it is hard to let them do that sometimes, especially when you know what's better. But sometimes we have to let them do what isn't necessarily best because they have to experience it for themselves.
Yeah. I really want to get them into meditation as early as possible. I think there's still
we do a meditation app. There is on, I think on Calm. Calm or Headspace, they do a Sesame Street meditation.
Oh, I'll have to check it out.
And they do. Yes, it's really fun. We've done it with Harper quite a bit. We haven't done it lately, but like they have a Cookie Monster meditation. We even have a Cookie Monster meditation book that's really fun.
Awesome.
They have an Elmo one where it's just kind of like they go through the 5 senses and slowing your body down and focusing on this versus that. So very kid-friendly meditations that are really fun. And then there's also anyone listening that's looking for a great series for their kids. Do you know My Mindful Words? My Magical Words.
I don't think
author
so.
Becky Cummings is the author. She has a whole series of books about the one I'm most obsessed with is the I am. I am smart. I am kind. I am courageous. I am beautiful. Like the power of the word I am. And that is my favorite one. But she has like the magical feelings. It's okay to feel. So there's, I think, a lot of resources out there with kids that I have found that they really do gravitate to, and they're entertaining.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to check those out. And that actually reminds me how Sophie's teachers she came home one day and they had a whole unit on their emotions and like identifying their emotions and what are they and when did they come up and why. And it made me think, like, when I was a kid, I don't think I ever had anybody sit down and explain emotions to me. Like, that's something like I think is a generational thing.
But if you look back, I mean, I'm sure you've watched a lot of like the old Disney movies with your children and things like that. If you actually look back, and maybe not even the old ones, maybe more of the newer ones that have come out, there's so much focus in them on the spiritual world and imagination. If you actually look at the root of these stories and where they're coming from and the things that they come up with is all very spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of it to be found. It's just how it's being presented.
Yeah. In a way that.
But I think Walt Disney was super spiritual.
Yeah. It reminds me, did you ever read that book, The Alchemist?
I never read it, no.
That was a big game changer for me. I read it like 10 years ago, maybe even 20. But it was like all about how, like what you mentioned earlier about how kids, when they're younger, they know what they want to be when they grow up. And then it's like society's pressures on them that make them feel like they can't do that. Or like, oh, you can't do that because how are you going to pay the bills? You can't do that. Where are you going to get the money to do this? Or you don't have the skill to do that. And it's all about finding that childhood innocence again. And
well, finding your inner child. I mean, everything talks about doing that inner child, reparenting your inner child and doing all the inner child work right now. But even I saw on Instagram today a post of someone that said 75% of people on their deathbed, their biggest regret is they didn't live the life that they wanted to live. They didn't live their life for themselves. They lived their life for someone else, what someone else said they should be, what they should do. they were too afraid, whatever reasons were. There were like a number of reasons of why people didn't live true and authentic to themselves. And I think that is one of the biggest things that I'm trying to help do, is help people get connected with who they truly are. So if you are having these feelings of, I want to explore this, like you said, like, how do you find where you fall in the spiritual realm? Follow your heart. Like, what is drawing you in? Where is that light? Our kids are masters of it. Our kids are teaching us this every day. I think every podcast I talk about this.
Yeah.
We come back to the kids because our kids know.
And they
know what they want.
Going back to that whole, like, how do you get into things, or like go along your spiritual path? I think with me too, it was like, I never really knew what the end result was. But it's like, just start somewhere. Just pick up one spiritual book that calls out to you, or take one class that sounds interesting to you. And like, by doing that, it's just going to start to open up so many different avenues and doors, and it really will just evolve naturally. And
you will be led in that natural direction.
Yeah.
And where you think it's leading and where you think your end game is may change.
Yeah. And that's great. You know, it doesn't have to, like, you're going to ebb and flow. And I think that's what's great about being alive, is like and having that free will is like, you can change your mind, and that's fine.
With your intuition, it's riding a wave. You're in the present moment, like what feels good in this moment. And you're going to evolve. So your whole concept of where you're going, I mean, even, you know, my business is a year old and we are going in a whole other direction than where we started. It's just, you know, and that's scary to be like, oh, I'm going to shift and change everything. But no, you just have to go with that flow, go with the flow. Yeah. I mean, that sounds very hippie-like, but going with the flow is key.
Yeah, with so much. And then a lot of it too is probably like just divinely guided with you, and like listening to your gut and like those intuitive hits you're getting. And I think a lot of times too, like we mentioned earlier too, and like working in TV and like movies and TV shows, they give you such a skewed idea of what your intuition is, or like if you're a medium, like what that might look like. That, you know, there's actually a few mediums that will see like apparitions. Like that's not normal. Right. Like that happens, but not for the majority of people. Like every single person on this planet is intuitive to spirit, right? And but it's just learning how to tap in and what to listen for, or how it comes through for you, because it's the most subtle thing that you, like, spirit is communicating with you all the time,
all day, every day.
You just don't realize it because so much is going on, or you just don't understand the signs or what to look for. Or
once you learn the language, how spirit communicates with you, you will see so much guidance, I feel like. Because, and everyone has a different language with spirit, in my opinion, like the way I look at it, because, you know, some people may see something, some people might get signs, some people may hear things. I know with you have very strong knowing.
Which is one of the hardest ones. I think that's hard because you don't know if it's coming from yourself or not.
Yeah.
You're like, is that my idea or did that come from spirit? And I feel like that's why another big thing with being like developing your intuition, or just being intuitive in general, is like trusting yourself. That is one of the hardest things to get past, is really building that confidence to trust yourself and trust your intuition and your gut.
That was last week's podcast, was all that is the key to your intuition, is learning to trust yourself.
Yeah.
That is it. And I mean, even going back to the whole TV thing, I've always said I will never put myself on TV because I know what can happen in an editing room. Like, it is so contrived. We can make someone say anything you want them to say. Yep. Literally, I can take a word from 10 years ago and put it in to a phrase to make you say something totally different than you ever said. It's just, so you have to take these images, and I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Oh, I did a scene on a show where I literally, the two people didn't even like talk in the whole scene, and I had to completely make it seem like they were fighting, and then they made up, and then they left. And I was like, how? They didn't even talk to each other. So like, anything is possible. Don't believe anything in reality TV.
Oh my goodness. No, I remember one day I was working on an entertainment show and they wanted a story. I think it was when Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes were dating. And they said, I was doing the promo for it and they're like, just make something up. Just say it was page 6. And I was just like, wow, I went to journalism school. This is so against my ethics. But who was I at the time? I had to do what they told me. It was the executive producer telling me to do this. And it's quite interesting. It's just another world. It's just another world. And you're just forced into doing these things. And
then I think what we can both take from our time in television is like, it's really helped us know like helping people develop their stories, right? And I think that's going to serve us as our lives develop and as our new businesses form, right? So it all serves a purpose.
My goodness, I feel like we can talk about this stuff forever.
I know, right? Seriously.
It's different when you get to talk to a friend about it, but thank you so much for talking to me tonight. This was really special.
It was so nice. I literally could talk to you all night long. So
it's fun when we get to catch up. But I didn't even ask you. I'm just sitting here chatting away. How can people get in touch with you? Your coaching, you have your crystals, you have your readings. Like, where can people find you? Where can they get your crystals? I've bought a couple, so it's a great site. Tell us how to find you.
Yeah, you can reach my crystal shop is Lilac Road Crystals. We're on Etsy and Instagram and TikTok. And I'm going to start opening up coaching and readings very soon. So keep an eye out for that. And I'm really...
And where will you announce that?
On the Lilac Road Crystals page. I think I'm going to morph it into Lilac Road Healing or something. To be decided. But that's the crystal business is going to be morphing. I think when I first started the crystals, I always knew that played a smaller part of a bigger puzzle. And then once I started the crystal shop, I realized how much work it is to have a crystal shop. And it kind of took over. And a lot of the coaching and the Reiki and the Akashic Records stuff kind of went to the wayside. So now I'm finding the time to really build, put the rest of the puzzle together so I can really step in, make this business what I have envisioned for so long. So I'm excited.
Perfect. Well, I will put all that information in the show notes, and I look forward to talking to you again really soon.
Thanks so much. It was so good to chat.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
And that's it for this week's Intentional Living with Courtney Myers. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Erica, for joining me in today's conversation. I always love talking to my friends about all this great stuff. Check out her website, Lilac Road Crystals. It's on Etsy and Instagram, and I'll put all that information in the show notes. And as always, you can find The Intentional Home and Living at CourtneyMyers.com, online and on YouTube. And soon you will find Intentional Media. We're launching that site very, very shortly. I'm very excited to tell you all about the new happenings in the intentional world. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.